My name is T. James Reagan, and this is the T. James Reagan podcast from Newark, New Jersey. If you subscribe to this podcast, this probably arrived in your feed like a jump scare because of how infrequent I make these episodes. Good or bad news, depending on how you view me, I'm still alive, so here's another episode. Since this podcast is an act of narcissism by a poor man's F. Scott Fitzgerald, the episodes generally only are recorded when I need to promote something. Being too ugly for TikTok, I've decided that the distracted masses of the podcast world are the limit of the promo that I'm willing to do. So here I am, giving you an episode because I released a new novel. It's called Pushing Closer, and you can buy it for $4 on Amazon. It's slow and quiet, and I hope you'll like it. And I think I'm already fatigued from self-promotion, so I'll get right to the subject of this episode. As previously stated, I'm obsessed with myself and I'm attracted to other people who have the same self-centered artistic focus on their work, and that means naturally I'm obsessed with Bradley Cooper. I think he's great. Never mind the fact that the only movie I've ever been in, Joker, was produced by him. I've always felt an affinity for him that it's hard to put into words, so I guess I won't try. I just get his vibe. I mean, marrying Irina Shayk is very relatable. Given an opportunity, I would have made the same mistake, even knowing how it ended with him is how it would end with me, and far quicker. I still would take that risk. So instead of giving me a reaction to himself, I'll give a reaction to his latest film, Maestro, which is a bioepic of the composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein. I don't think I make any tar jokes in this recording, so I'm pretty proud of that. And you'll notice that it's not structured in the essay style that these podcasts usually are. This is totally, the messy, right after the credits rolled, I just started talking, hit record on my phone, and that's what this is. So if you haven't seen Maestro yet, you're going to want to watch it, because otherwise you'll have no idea what I'm talking about, even more than you normally have no idea what I'm talking about on these episodes. So, pause this, go on Netflix, watch Maestro, buy my new novel, Pushing Closer. It's, slow and quiet, and you might find it relaxing for the winter. This is enough incoherent rambling to introduce more incoherent rambling on Bradley Cooper's second film, Maestro. Here we go. It's weird for me to see Bradley start the movie with a quote from the guy who the movie is about. Like, I get that it sort of sets the tone and it follows both his, the conducting part of his life and also the his sexuality, and, sort of sets a tone that it's going to be about his marriage. But I feel like you can work that in to the dialogue and make it so much stronger than just a quote, yellow text on a screen when you first sit down. And so that was just a strange choice to me. If it was a quote from another person that pertains to the movie, then I would totally understand it, because you can't work in a quote from, you can't put a Nietzsche quote in the dialogue of your movie. And I don't think he's going to show up at some point due to the fact that they did not live at the same time. So I would get if that's what they were doing, but I don't know why he started it like that. But I did like that he started on the old version, because there's an easier way to get into it where it's like, all right, we're in the black and white now, and we're going to slowly transfer into the color. We're going to get to know this guy real quick. And the fact that right now we're in color and we see the old Bernstein, then that at least gives us some context of where are we going to end up in the end too. Is this dude still alive, or did he get hit by a taxi on Fifth Ave when he was 42 years old? Because I had no
context for Bernstein beyond if he showed up in one of my, like, Woody Allen soundtracks or something like that in Spotify. And so the old age version is really good too, because you always sort of worry about that makeup, where is he gonna look like Mrs. Doubtfire or whatever. But it's really well done. And then once we hit into that black and white, I also like that, we could have really teased out the fact that Bernstein was, I mean, I'm going to say bisexual. I don't know what he identified as. He didn't have a social network at the time to, use the drop downs, but seems, bi energy from him. And I like that they immediately established, like, oh, he's fucking dudes. They didn't play around with it or anything. Like, he's playing bongos on a guy's ass within, the first 5 minutes. So I like that they didn't try to get cute with that, and they were just like, here's what it is. And you don't see him conduct immediately, where he gets that call and he understands, like, this is his big break. And you see him, strange camera work there, where I liked how they transitioned the scenes. I thought it was a unique way to do it, where you're not just giving these hard cuts where, you're almost going through like a storybook, where he's running down the hall and then suddenly he's in the theater. I thought that was a nice flourish, and definitely served a purpose for later on. And then I like that we didn't immediately see him conducting, because that's what what Bradley did in A Star Is Born, where he understood, like, to be a rock star, I need to immediately show you that I'm capable of doing this, because if you don't buy in on that, then I'm fucked. And you can see my notes on A Star Is Born. They're like 5 tweets down from whenever I post this. If I post this, I'll probably listen back to it and be like, oh, I'm the worst. But so he didn't do a show-offy thing of like the immediately where, oh, if the Oscar voters turn this off within the first 20 minutes, at least they'll have seen me conducting, and maybe they'll just choose me because I have 8 nominations and I need another one. I liked that he didn't immediately go into it. It's interesting that the way Carrie is introduced is so exposition heavy, where it establishes that they play these sort of like cute games with each other, which I like, but I think you need more natural flirty. Like, they're summarizing the flirty conversation that they had for us. So I don't think exposition is the way that we first walk into this big romance. I that didn't appeal to me a ton, but it makes up for it immediately after that with the line reading, where, like, there's just something so romantic about actresses. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, that they have a creative passion that I also have in me, and they understand that, like being alone and getting all that done, and building an interior life of someone who doesn't exist. It's so romantic to me. And then for them to do that line reading scene was just so gorgeous. And then when it flipped on the lights, like, I was so in the trance that when those lights flipped on, like I remembered that I was watching a movie and was like out of my fantasy world. So I thought that was amazing. And I liked their discussion of luck, like, because ultimately you could say that Carrie's character, was lucky and was unlucky at the same time. And when sometimes that phone call never comes, like it did for Leonard, and you're just that artist that's always waiting for that phone call in that dark room. You're never pulling the shades open. So I thought that was really, really well done. And then when she starts telling him like, oh, I like your smell, or I was like, oh, she's got daddy issues just like I like too. So I was like, Carrie's hitting all the buttons here. I really was endeared to her character initially due to her, art life ways and daddy issues. And when Bradley's shooting those early scenes and they're in the black and white and they're in the, I don't know aspect ratios, but a more boxed off aspect ratio, when he does those close-ups, those are, you really get to see the full mountain range of an actor's face. And it's risky to do, when you have your characters wearing prosthetics, but I just thought it looked so good, that black and white and those real nice close-ups. And the transitions, instead of cutting, were also a really interesting choice by Matty on, his cinematography. I don't think I've ever left a Matty movie and said like, sort of missed the mark there. Like, he is the guy. He's my, while all my other guys are like, oh, Hoytema is so, like, I don't give a shit about a movie that's shot in IMAX. Like, we could destroy every movie ever made in IMAX and I wouldn't give a shit. So, that's not my interest in cinematography. And then when it gets to the sailor dancing scene and it breaks the spell of the movie, like the transitions were setting up something and I was like, all right, that's an interesting choice. And then you get to the sailor dance scene and you realize it's setting up that you're seeing art and life enmesh together, and it's a really brave thing to do, but it's also a great way to keep your biopic from being so stale. Like, oh, all right, here's another cradle to grave greatest hits thing. Like, no, you're in cinema and you're in the theater, and if you don't take advantage of this stuff, then what the fuck are you doing? What's the point? Read a Wikipedia page to me. And this is not a recitation of a Wikipedia page. There are so many creative choices that Cooper's making. And so I really appreciated that, that he took that risk and he had the balls to do it, because you can play this one safe, and because you play it safe, it can be so agreeable that you get the Oscar preferential ballot where everyone says, oh yeah, that was a 7 out of 10 for me. Nothing really took me out of it. And that sailor choice is a choice, and it's a choice by an artist. And so I appreciated that he had the balls to make that choice. These are performers. Let's see them perform. And then an interesting point was the post-coital scene where they're lying on the floor. And at first I thought it was like, oh, his dick doesn't work because he's gay, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't go that stereotypical route. And then his story about how, like whether he wants to say a truth or a fear or whatever. And he talks about how he would wake up from a dream and the dream would be about killing his father. And he would sit in the bed and he would sort of like contemplate doing it. And the juxtaposition from Carrie saying like, oh, I feel so safe, like that your scent and my dad's scent were both all about safety. And then here's Leonard saying like, I had these impulses against my father and they were dangerous. I am danger in related to my father, I'm not safe. I don't see that safety that you see. I thought that was a really creative way to get that point across of their, the way they view life, where that family was safety or that family was a threat. And I thought that was, a great bit of screenwriting from Cooper and Singer. And then after the marriage, when he does the voice change, I fell more in tune with the character, because there's a bit of that, mid-Atlantic accent or whatever, like that. Oh yeah, well, I gotta, we'll suit him up real quick, boys. And they drop that, and he goes for a more like nasally voice. Obviously I have an affinity for nasally voices. You can hear me right now in all of the painful misery that is being Tommy Reagan. And I really liked that, the transition on that. I know that it's natural that people's voices change as they age, but there's also when he's sitting on that couch, he's sort of talking about how you have a schizo life as an artist, where sometimes you are alone in a room, and an intrusion is like a slap across the face, where you're doing the important work, you're communicating with God in your own little way of, asking for a glimpse at creation. And then there's the schizo of, in order to be an artist and to be heard and to have people indulge in your work, you need to be in the world. You need to be in the world to collect inspiration. You need to be in the world to make connections. You need to be in the world to find the right people who can deliver your vision in the exact way that you need it. And you need to be in the world because if you're always in that room, it's almost like you don't exist. Like when you put that stuff, when you put your work out, there's a chance that no one cares. And there are all those hours where you're invisible, and when the work comes out, you can be very visible again, or you can be just as invisible as you were in that room, because no one has been led to it, no one's been inspired by it, or it's just bad work. And so the schizo nature of all that stuff, I thought that was interesting when he went into it, when they were being interviewed. And then you cut to him out in the world, and he sees his, a male mistress? A mister? You see his mister, walking down the street, and he's so gregarious in front of his mister's wife. And then when it's just the two of them walking down the street, there's like so much to be said and so much that can't be said at the same time. Cooper plays that really well, and he gives you that silence. So, you feel the discomfort, and you're just like, say something. You were so gregarious before when that little baby was there, and then now that you have a little bit of intimacy, you can be more intimate. Why aren't you? And then it's that thing of when he stops and he does get that intimacy, he does get that affection, and then he's worried about the other side of the street. And the other side of the street saying, is that him? And that's the question that people would have if they saw someone who was in the closet, where you'd go, is that him? Is the real him is he a gay guy? And I thought can that be him is a question of, can that be Leonard Bernstein, and him wondering, can this be me? Can I be the guy out on the street with the boyfriend? So that was another really nice piece of screenwriting. And then after that, it sort of splashes into color. And I love the way Cooper does it. It's like he shows us a painting for the first frame of the vivid color dress and those drapes and everything. And it's just a really evocative image. So when you're blasted into color, it's what's like a jump scare of aesthetic pleasure. It's a jump scare of aesthetic pleasure. I'm just going to say, we haven't created a term for it yet. We'll call it Coopering. He can trademark it, where it's like, man, Coopered the fuck out of that scene. And so once it gets to the party, this is the first time that I saw, or I was reminded of Paul Thomas Anderson, where I really liked the work that Bradley and Paul did together. And the fact that these are both pandemic movies, it was clear that Bradley was almost at the end of his prep for Maestro when he was doing Licorice Pizza. And I have to assume that he and Paul had a couple dinners where they just went back and forth, because the party scenes were very reminiscent of the Master, that like going down the river pig fuck scene. It was very evocative of that, and I always liked the way that looked, where I don't think he shot this on 70 like the Master was shot, but it had that quality, that crispness to it. And then as the party went on, you sort of understood that, like, oh, okay, he's getting either a little more sloppy or a little more confident or a little more brazen in how he conducts himself in public. And I don't have a good enough understanding of what years, like I tried to look at the clothes to sort of figure it out, but I don't have a good enough understanding of what year we were in at any given point. And then also like what year did the Village people show up or whatever, when did all of this become like passe and like, oh yeah, this is just how it is. And so I can't really figure out how risky he truly was being, or like if his career could be threatened at all by this. But he also didn't seem super concerned about his career being threatened by his true nature, because I think going back to the black and white, when they were at that dinner table and they were like, you'd be a great Leonard Burns and it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. And there, he runs away from that. And there is there's always a choice in an artist's life that can make them so much easier, where it's like, I'm into, high fashion, pop and all this other stuff. It would be so easy for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm a LGBTQIA, plus or whatever, because like the last book I wrote is just a lesbian novel, and then now I have to get all the shit for that because it'd be like, oh, another straight man, blah 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 blah. And so like part of the conceit of my most recent book is that one of the things that inspired it was the fact that they wouldn't let Scarlett Johansson play anything beyond just like a big-titted straight bombshell. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna write a lesbian story where the only possible person that they could cast for this lesbian story is straight Scarlett Johansson, and I'm even going to name the character Scarlett so it beats them over the head. So, I appreciate that Bernstein didn't go with the Burns thing, and maybe he that's what that scene was showing, was Cooper saying, he's not going to be scared that he's going to lose a job because he's seen with a man. The aspect ratio of the way his interactions with his wife are shot was another thing that I really liked, where you were observing these fights where Cooper was almost saying like, we're voyeurs to these marriage struggles. And it's not shot in the Marriage Story way that a fight, with the close-ups and the, seeing the rage and emotion on the face You're standing in the doorway. You're behind a fence. You're, lingering around these fights because this is voyeuristic. There's a voyeuristic nature to how you're observing these very real people, their lives. These aren't characters. These are real people. And so he shot that really great. And because of the way he shot that, and because of the way he squished the frame, everything is tall like a theater. And so you might have like the bottom third of the frame with the actual characters having the dialogue, and then there's 2/3 of the frame that this is the theater that we're watching this occur in. And it's an actress fighting with a conductor, and so of course they're in a theater. Of course that's the, where they're performing. And instead of giving those back and forth, all right, we'll use your best take, my best take, your best take, my best take, we stay in the scene. So they have to both deliver their best take for 4 minutes. And who knows what the TikTokification of the world is, that if these scenes go on and on, if people are just getting out their phone. I purposely left my phone in the other room when I watch this, because I just, there's always that temptation to be like, all right, well, let me go see what all the people I hate on Letterboxd are writing about this. So they're like, Bernstein Burrs, or, I just hate those people, but then I always have to look at what they're saying so that like, I can fill up the hate in my heart. I don't know what it is. I have a personality disorder. And the long scenes really give it time to breathe, and you can only really do that with 2 very good actors who have done this a lot. Like, I don't know what Cooper's rehearsal, if he goes on set and then it's off to the races, or if there's a lot of rehearsing beforehand. I know that, he has 6 years of prep on this, so it's probably drilled into his skull. He could probably recite it now, while out on the streets of New York, or, at a Philadelphia Eagles game, watching them lose at 3rd straight, just may I add. So all you people giving me shit about the Giants, we got Tommy DeVito, Italian Stallion, New Jersey representation. We've won a game in December. Have the Eagles? No, they haven't, Bradley. Maybe you should conduct a little business over there. Get Sirianni to run more than like 3 different offensive plays. I feel like I've digressed into just... I shouldn't have mentioned Letterboxd. It's one of my triggers. The next scene I really got into was Maya Hawke, where Maya Hawke's really good casting because Bernstein's daughter looked like Maya Hawke. Like, it's a very strange thing that there, trust me, no prosthetics were needed there. They just popped her out of the makeup chair. And when they go from that fight where we're lingering in the doorway, and he's, dressed in all his casual clothes, and he goes down there and he meets with Maya, and you're wondering, like, this guy has such a tight control on his life, but he had been getting a little sloppy, so maybe he's just gonna come out and say it. And then he gets down there and, does the cop out. He looks in his daughter's eyes and says, people are just jealous. And he's in such a prestigious position that, yes, of course people are going to be jealous, so that's an easy buy-in that you can do. And then when she says that she's relieved by that, Cooper's reaction is probably one of the best pieces of acting in the entire movie is Cooper's reaction, and we just hang on it and hang on it and hang on it, because he fucked himself there, where by cheating her of the truth, he received the truth. And the truth that he received complicated it so much more than, what could have happened if he truly revealed himself to his daughter. And I thought that was just a really, the tension of the scene held up so well, and then you're disappointed in him, and then he gets smacked in the face by those words. And it was just, that part I really enjoyed. And then the other fight that happens after that, he goes and has that fight by the pool with Carrie, and he's framed in that fence, and that fence is like the way the slats are and the way we see him. He's in jail now. The fence posts are bars, and that's his jail that he's in, because he the close aspect ratio could be that closet, and then we're watching from the doorway, and then we're watching from between the fences. He can't just throw the door open. And that's like the type of confident filmmaking where if you don't pull that off, and we have to watch a 4-minute scene through slats in a fence, like we're some peeping Tom, then that people could say, like, all right, enough of this, because their brain is just so trained to see dialogue certain ways. But Cooper is skilled enough to do that, and it's confident filmmaking, and it's also filmmaking that you don't see on television. And so it's like, all right, we're watching a movie right now. This is a movie. This is not a Netflix 9-part series where it should have been a movie. This is a movie with all the resources of a movie and all the confidence of a movie maker making that movie. And so I really it captured my attention like a fight that was shot normally wouldn't, where I'd be like, this is a little redundant. I was okay where if I felt like it was redundant, because the way I was watching it was not redundant. It was totally unique. And then I think there's another time jump after that where we get to Thanksgiving. Well, yeah, because he has the Snoopy there, where I don't know if Bradley Cooper is just really in tune with the girls on Twitter, but literally all of the girls on Twitter who I follow who don't follow me back are obsessed with Snoopy. And I don't know what's going on with it, because Snoopy will just be photoshopped into a picture of like In the Mood for Love or something like that. And I'll be like, what are we doing? What is this? I guess like Snoopy is like whatever that anime guy is, like Naruto or something like that. Whatever, like all the young men are looking at now. Maybe Snoopy is like that for girls, where they each need an avatar, but Bradley was bringing the Snoopy in this one. He randomly inserted the Snoopy in there. So maybe Leah is already on Twitter and telling him what's cool with the kids. And that the fight that he has for Thanksgiving, I related to his character so much, where, Carrie's dressing him down, and she's like, you do this thing that you love out of hate for, like, and to throw it in people's faces. And that totally is a part of being creative, where, like when I wrote like Hop Blonde Girls with Heavy Eye Makeup, the entire audience was girls, because I was writing it on Tumblr at the time. And so I would be attacking like 50% of the audience of that book. And then like it was the girls who hated the 50% of the audience that I was attacking really liked it, or they just hadn't seen, that type of dialogue against such a unified faction of Tumblr, that it sort of blew their mind. And I was writing it from like a place of hate, and then I was excited by what the hate would happen. And so Carrie is dressing him down in a way that is actually true, but we're also not ashamed by it. That's the thing, is that like you get off to it a little bit. It's fun to do that. And she thinks like, oh, like how sad, you sad man, you're using this to throw it back in our faces. And, like maybe I need to get this pep talk as well, but it's fun to do that. But then she ends it with, you need to be careful or else you're going to die alone, which is how all of my relationships, and it's screamed at me as they leave my life forever. And so far, they are totally correct. I am all alone. I'm recording this on a Wednesday night at 9:55 p.m. after watching Maestro all by myself because no one would come over and watch it with me. So, point Carrie, it's an astute observation you've made. I definitely agree. We're probably going to die alone. I don't know how Bernstein died. He probably had like a couple queens by his bed, That's it. Maybe that's another reason I need to give up this staunch heterosexuality, is that like maybe I need just at least a couple queens who'll show up, when I'm dying of liver failure in 15 years. And then we get that scene where he's walking out to a practice performance, and he has his back to us as he's delivering this really passionate monologue. And it's such a smart filmmaking trick by Cooper to do that, because he's delivering this very passionate monologue that you would love to see the expression on his face. You would love to see the passion in his eyes. You can't help but, want to be sitting in that audience. And that's sort of exactly what a conductor does, is that his back is to the audience, but everything that he's doing, those grand gestures, are his monologue, and you want to see his face. And so every time he turns to you and you get a glimpse, it's like this, oxygen comes into the room. And the moment he turns around, that scene is over, and we're jump cutted over to Carrie. And it was it's such smart filmmaking by Cooper. I really liked that. And then the deflating parts are, we get some scenes now with Carrie where, we see her, she's back at work. She does have control at her workplace, where they talk about like how she ripped up the carpet. So, she's still a conductor of her own creative endeavor. And that still makes her romantic to me, because she still was living the art life just as Leonard was. And you get, that scene with her coworkers, and then she's sitting at the table with Sarah Silverman, and Maya's there too. And she's like dressed like a pilgrim. Her eyes look so old, and there's I don't know, there's something so heartbreaking about, you've seen Carrie Mulligan was Daisy in the adaptation of the greatest American novel ever written. And, Daisy's laugh was money, and she sparkled, and she was the bright light. And then just to see Carrie's eyes in this scene, it made me, I was like, she's so pathetic. And my mom always calls me a misogynist, and anytime I say these things to her, she always says, how did I raise you like this? How did you become this person? So I understand how this all comes off. But this, these are my feelings of having just walked out of this movie. And I thought she was so pathetic in that scene. And then Maya leaves, and she talks about like, I found another one, like lifetime fag hag. This is who I am. I'm going through life. I pick all the same that way. And then it's even more pathetic. And it's just so deflating. And I was like really taken out of it. And then Cooper sends us into the church. And like I love churches. I love the architecture. I love the acoustics. I love the lights. I love the echoes. Everything about a church is my thing. And so I'm like immediately energized by this. And I had been watching Emma Stone and Bradley Cooper talk about this movie, and Emma said, she was just in awe of this 6-minute conducting scene. And I was like, holy shit, this is it. This is the conducting scene. And so after like I was feeling my lowest about this movie, it spikes back up. And this is like the most bravura, mesmerizing, soaring scene. And you never really see orchestras shot like this because it's a full orchestra, and the way it's shot is so cinematically appealing that I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'd never seen anything shot like that. And then Cooper's performance, where he's blueballing you and blueballing you and blueballing you, and then you finally get to see full gusto, and you realize like, oh, he's wanted to do this forever. Like Jake Gyllenhaal, eat your heart out. He is living your dream right now. And oh my gosh, it was such a rush. Like that's one of the scenes of the year. It doesn't beat Asteroid City Margot Robbie balcony scene, which is my scene of the year overall, but it, just a total knockout. And it could be cringe. If he doesn't pull that off, if you've been watching, an hour and 40 minutes into this movie or however long this comes in, it comes in, at least an hour and a half in. And if he doesn't pull this off and looks like wailing, flailing, armed tube man, it would be humiliating on, like you thought Carey Mulligan was pathetic. If he didn't pull that off, he would be the king pathetic. He would trump Carey Mulligan's eyes in that earlier scene. But he pulls it off completely. It's gorgeous. And the whole movie he is underscoring this hurt back. Like, when he wakes up, every time he has a hurt back after he had sex, he had that hurt back. But when he's conducting, there's not, he is full use of his body, throwing himself like an athlete, pouring with sweat. And it was just, it's like, that's what it is. When you're in the zone and when you're doing like the thing you were put on earth to do, everything else melts away. The whole world melts away. All the pain melts away. And that like tiny fraction of time where you have no pain, there's nothing else like it. And so when he finishes up there and he goes and he kisses Carrie, and you do believe it because he's on that adrenaline and on that painkiller, and he doesn't have that other part of his life to worry about. He's just in it in that moment. And it was just, his arms were like up, palms to the heavens, like he was communicating with God. And then you go from that to the, stark white waiting room. And the moment you see that nurse walking down the hall, I had no knowledge of Bernstein's wife, if she was still alive, if she passed away, anything like that. And the moment you see that woman walking down the hall and she's a nurse, everything flips on its head. And there's such a short amount of time between that bravura conducting scene and then you're in that tiny little room where everything else, the rooms seem so high, so big. In this room, because of the aspect ratio, it's so tiny. And then instead of staring at a conductor's back, you're staring at a doctor's back, and he's giving Carey Mulligan, the news that she's going to lose one of her breasts, that she has cancer. And they don't cut away from it. He gives it just as much time as that performance. And this is, the soaring orchestra, but it's the soaring orchestra of, human pain, of all of the pain crashes back down to earth. That the conducting scene was no pain. This is all pain. And Cooper just stays on it and stays on it. You want to get out of this tiny room. You want to get back to the vaulted ceilings of the church, and you can't get out of there. The way you do get out of there is that that instead of getting into a cramped car, they take that walk and they go and they sit back down and they sit back to back, just like they were when they were young and before all of this happened. And they play that same game again. And the way it's shot is just gorgeous, because now you're in full bloom, but they've had to get through their entire life, and it's been colored by everything that they've gone through. And then it's just very touching, like where he's like, put all your weight on me. And when Carrie told him, what you do, you're going to end up dying alone. And she, made those sacrifices, and she accepted just like there was that luck. The phone call came. This time a phone call came, and that luck, there is no luck. She's the unlucky one. She got the phone call that she has been chosen, and she's the sick one. There's not someone else who's sick and she gets to fill in for them like the start of the film. She got the call and she's the one who's sick. And so for him to be like, put all your weight on me, and then you cut to Carrie in that chair, and she's so skinny, so feeble, and instead of, I can't even tell you what that story was about, because I was just watching her, and it's one of those things where, like, Bernstein was a conductor who had to make sure that every note is perfect and everything continues forward, and all the right points hit. And then she was sitting there and she's spitting up into a Kleenex at all the wrong times, stopping and starting this story. The other person doesn't want to be sitting there by the end of it. And it turns into, the production of her kids trying to perform to her. And she just breaks down and, pretty much can't do it anymore. And from there, you just see her, it's the end of the song. And so it's interesting that last scene, Leonard comes in and he's wearing that stethoscope, pretending to be a doctor, and he's wearing that stethoscope, like, he's going to listen to the last beats of her heart, and he does. And the problem I had with, earlier with how they met with the exposition, there's no exposition for her passing. There's just that, I don't know, you watch it from a window. And so that, that was really, really well done. And then, it reminded me of like Terms of Endearment or something like that, where that end scene just really hits. And then you get a cut, when we're catching up with him, and we're like, okay, we are back to the beginning of the movie now. And well, first of all, there's a terrible REM needle drop where like how did Spielberg and Scorsese watch that and just be like, Bradley, what the fuck are you doing here? This is amateur hour. So, took at least I was able to compose myself after that, where I was like, he didn't do the fucking REM needle drop. But then he goes in and you see him older and he's passing his ability and his skill on to the next generation. And his wife passed away, and then he's looks like not that far behind. We really see an old guy, and he's passing it on. But then you see him in the club, and I was like, oh, this is why everyone is so disgusted by me constantly getting these 20-year-old girls to be my muse for 6 months, where I just steal all their story, where seeing an old gay man dancing in a club with this young guy who just needs help. I was like, oh, this is why I'm so gross to people. And so that was a good context thing, because I was always like, I think artists always have muses, and it's romantic to have a muse, without it, what are we? But maybe we should dial back that a bit. So there was a little self-reflection at the end there. And when you get back to that interview scene, I was like, all right, now Cooper is going to kick it into overdrive, and you're going to get, this is going to be the final cymbal crash of his symphony. And you get maybe 2-3 sentences, and then fade to Carrie title card, and it's done. And I was like, there's a half hour left of this. Either we didn't need to see him passing that torch on to the younger guy, or maybe it needed to fade from that scene at the window where she's gone, and then he's conducting at her funeral or something. I haven't thought about it, but it was too quick from the club scene to the interview, very short interview, the title drop of her, and then we're in credits. And it just, I don't know, the end felt like a bit of a cheat, and it's not like this is one of these overindulgent, however long Dune 2 is going to be, where they just let a Frenchman do whatever he wants to for hours and hours, and we have to hear about desert governments or something like that. This is you're telling a life, and you aren't going to get the entire person. At best, you're going to get a sketch of them. But I feel like we were down to the shoes on the ground, and Cooper stopped sketching. And maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe it's but it's just a pacing thing. I think there's something off about the pacing, where he gave so much time to showing the mentorship, but then there's the club scene and then the little interview. I don't know. The ending didn't hit for me. But overall, I have to say, you do see growth for Cooper as a director, and the biggest thing you see is confidence, where he makes so many choices that you only can do if you're a moron or if you're confident, and Bradley Cooper is not a moron. He's been doing this for too long, and he's too smart to not understand what he's doing on this. And so I'm going to watch it again. Star is Born does edge it out slightly, but I always lean towards contemporary. It's just, if you've seen how I write in the now. I like to watch things in the now, which is why I don't have huge issues with remakes where I'm not super precious about it, because if you can bring me into the now and it's just as interesting as the Barbra Streisand version, then, by all means go for it. And so I do think there was a big improvement in him saying, this is my vision and I'm giving you my vision. And as far as the Oscars and everything like that, it's going to do well. I'm not going to get super stressed out about it. I mean, last year, a Rick and Morty fanfic won the Oscar, and like 9 other Oscars too. So pointless conversations to be had. And there's going to be a war now with all the Nolan cells and the Cillian Murphy potato farmer stands who are going to get in a war on this, and it's going to diminish the artistic statement that Cooper's making, and then also just the love letter to being an artist that this is. And the Bernstein doesn't care about money. There's not a scene where he's like, I'm going to have to take this symphony to pay for Maya Hawke's college. There's none of that discussion in there, because this is about art, and it's not about money. It's not about commerce, and it's not about awards. There's never him, like walking up to get a Tony or, a Simpy, whatever the symphony awards are. So it's it's cheap to discuss it in terms of Oscars, and it's just very exciting to see what Cooper will do, because he's transforming himself in these roles, and he's transforming them with his heart intact. He's always Bradley Cooper's machinery. Like, his machinery is placed in the body of another being, and it's just really, really inspiring to see him do that. And I can't wait for his next movie. And I really appreciate Netflix for doing this. I watch one Netflix movie a month. I don't like the content they make. I don't think their television is good. I think that they play into, all these diversity rules, which are totally anti-art. But every now and then they give a guy a shitload of money to make his exact vision, and that's what they did here. And so, that's why I stick with Netflix. I pay $19 a month to watch one movie, where it'd be cheaper to see it in the theaters, which, this movie should have been in theaters, should have been in a lot of theaters, because if I could hear that symphony in a theater, it would, my experience would be so much more heightened, and I already have a very good opinion of this film. So if you've made it this far, then I think you're probably going to die alone. So should probably address that. And if you made it this far and you haven't watched the movie, I don't think I spoiled anything for you, because this is an experiential film. And it's a craftsman's film. So if you're saying like, I don't really like what this dumb misogynist had to say about this movie that sounds like just some other celebrity getting their rocks off, then no, you got to put it on. I don't do this justice. I'm sitting on a futon in Newark, New Jersey. This is not the ideal way to deliver art to your heart. So put on Bradley Cooper's Maestro and enjoy.